little bit of local government in this podcast, and specifically about the village of Bartlett, where Bartlett High School is. So let's put this in context. So the U.S. is governed by the Constitution. It's the supreme law of the land, Article 6. And the Constitution only provides for two forms of government in the U.S. Our federal government, which is headquartered in Washington, D.C., and then the 50 state governments, like Illinois state government, which is headquartered in Springfield. Those are the only two governments. Then where did the village of Bartlett and Hanover Park Streamwood, where do they fit in? Because they're not mentioned in the Constitution. All those local governments derive their powers as sub-governments from the state. So the state authorizes the village of Bartlett and Hanover Park to be able to hire policemen, to make laws. That all comes from the state. So really, even though all these local governments are under the state. And there's a lot of local governments in the U.S. Well, there's just one United States of America, and we have one national government in Washington, D.C., and there are 50 states, and we know that Illinois has the government in Springfield. There are over 89,000 total local governments. And you can see from this chart here that Illinois has more than most states. They've got almost 7,000 local governments, school districts, and especially towns like Hanover Park and Streamwood. So they have more per person than Texas, California, New York, and Florida. They actually have, Texas, California, New York all have more people than Illinois, but we have more governments than them. But even Florida, which has 7,000 in Illinois, just 1,600 in Florida, they still have fewer governments per person. But they still have a lot of governments. That's the point. 89,000, that's a lot of governments. And 13,000 of those are school districts like U46. So local governments aren't just like the village of Hanover Park, the village of Streamwood. They're also, sometimes they're rural taxing districts, fire prevention districts, and school districts. Those are all local governments. And so you can see this Venn diagram here of federalism, the three units of government, the federal and the state, the two that are mentioned in the Constitution, along with the local governments, which flow from state authority. Those three all work together. So in some things your duty is to the federal government, in some things your duty is to the state, in some things you have a duty to the local governments, and in some cases they're mixed, like the Venn diagram shows. There are four basic kinds of local government. The first two make up 90-some% of the governments that are local governments. The mayor council, which is called the strong mayor form of government, and the council manager, which is called the weak mayor form of government. Commission governments are hardly used anymore. Town hall governments are used up in New England, where the whole town can vote every month on things, but we're not going to talk about those. And then tribal government, a quick word about tribal government. Tribal governments are the Indian governments for all the Indian reservations. The United States treats them like they're a separate country. They're not. It's not like village of Streamwood or something. They can each decide how they do things. Each one of these reservations can have their own kind of school district, their own kind of mayor, their own kind of government. They're separate, but while they're tribal districts, they're a very small number of people. Less than probably 1%. So the mayor council form of government, these have different names sometimes, but sometimes called strong mayor, is where the public elects the council and then the public elects the mayor. They're both elected, but notice the mayor is in charge of the village departments, like the fire department, the police department, streets, water, sanitation, and those. So that's the strong mayor form of government. Looking at it pictorially a different way, the voters elect both the council and the mayor, but it's the mayor that elects the department heads and kind of runs those departments. So obviously the mayor, or the president, as is often called, it has the most power. The weak mayor form of government, the council and the mayor are both elected again by the public, but notice it's not the mayor who's in charge of the village departments, it's the council. That's why this is called a weak mayor form, the council, and usually they run the departments through a manager that they hire, a professional manager that knows how to run things. Looking at this pictorially a different way, basically the voters elect both the council, often called trustees, the board of trustees, and the mayor, sometimes called the president, as in Bartlett and Streamwood. And it's the council in the weak mayor form, so the council pretty much runs the head through an administrator. And the mayor, like my dad was the mayor of Elk Grove, he just ran the council meetings. He didn't really have the power. If there was a tie, he voted. Other than that, the power was with the council. So just comparing the two of these, the weak mayor and the strong mayor, notice that both the mayor or the president and the council, the board of trustees, they're both elected by the voters. So the council and the mayor, the board of trustees and the president are elected by the voters. And in a weak mayor form, The council has the power, and in a strong mayor, it's the mayor that has the power. And basically this was a reform, having the weak mayor form of government, because mayors, Boss Tweed, the first Mayor Daley, were like bosses, and they could control things, and they were just politicians. Maybe they were dishonest. So during the reform period, the progressive era, they said, hey, let's get rid of that mayor and let's hire a professional. So notice in green, you've got the city manager. He's the professional. He's gone to school for this. He's studied these things. We hire him. He's not elected, and that's the best way to do things, so they thought. And that's where the weak mayor came from. So this is what the Village of Bartlett looks like. So is this a weak mayor or a strong mayor? You've got the citizens of Bartlett here, and they elect the mayor and the board of trustees. Then the board of trustees hires a village administrator who's an expert. The board also appoints like the zoning commission that decides, shopping centers are going to go over here, rental housing is going to go over here. And then the village administrator is in charge of the village department. So is this a weak mayor or strong mayor? You should know from what we've said here. So there's a picture of the Bartlett Village Board, 6 trustees and 1 village president. Half the board's elected every 2 years, and this is an election year because odd number years are local government years, so 2017 is odd numbered. So 3 of the trustees of Bartlett will be up for election this year. The elections are at large and nonpartisan. Nonpartisan means you don't run as a Republican or a Democrat. You just run on the better Bartlett, make Bartlett better ticket, or I'm for Bartlett ticket or whatever, but you're not Republican and Democrat. And elected at large is different than like Chicago, where there are 50 wards, and you can see the numbers here. So like the 50th ward, my dad worked in the 50th ward for Alderman Sperling. That's just from one part of Rogers Park that elected him. And then 49, that's another part of the city, and 44 is a different part of the city. So you're only electing the alderman who's in your area. That's electing them by wards. But when they're elected at large, like in Bartlett, it means you can live anywhere in Bartlett. If you're a trustee, those 6 trustees can live anywhere. They could all live on the same block. They don't represent different parts of Bartlett. They represent all of Bartlett. And then both the trustees and the village president serve for 4 years. The board of trustees, they represent, the residents of Bartlett and everything that happens. Things like the Bartlett Homecoming Parade. That there's got to be police there. There has to be people, guarding the streets and stuff, and the community has to know it's coming. So they get involved in everything. If there's going to be a development, somebody wants to put in some rental housing. Well, how much is that going to tax the sewer? How much is it going to tax the water? We have to know in a planned development. So anything that's new that comes into town, the board of trustees has to decide what they think about it. Now, the village administrator, in a weak mayor form of government, is the one who basically runs the show. So in Bartlett, weak mayor form of government, we have a village administrator who's basically a hired professional who manages all aspects of the village of Bartlett. He's in charge of, seeing how the police force works, how the fire department works, how the sewer, sanitation, public works, and all of that. The departments in Bartlett are administration, Bartlett Hills Golf Course, the building department, community development, finance, police, and public works. And there's a lot of different jobs that go along with all those different departments. And I tell you that to say, look, there are good salaries. Maybe some of you hadn't thought about, local government, but look at this: city manager up to $250,000, assistant administrator up to $150,000, community relations $90,000. Hey, you want to work for the golf course? There's all kinds of things to do on the greens, the banquets, pro shop manager $70,000, grounds workers $65,000, food and beverage manager up to $100,000, head chef $70,000. Building department, electrical, plumbing inspectors, building inspectors, you're giving permits for decks, remodelings, driveways, $140,000. Assistant building director, $100,000. Inspectors, $85,000. There's some good jobs. Community development, good salaries there. Finance department, chief accountant, billing clerks, HR manager, $140,000. Police department, sergeant, $110,000. A records clerk, up to $60,000. Police chiefs, $150,000. Public works, streets, water, wastewater, $170,000 for a public works director. Water supervisor, $110,000. A lot of good salaries here. So, and notice the backgrounds you have. You can major in almost anything in college, and could be a job that fits you in local government. So that's something for some of you to think about.